not having expectations. I know this might not be like the positive thought, it might be more as a negative thought, but just not expecting the answer is what helped me. Is I just like when I sent a pitch email, I just send it as an let's see if this works kind of mentality. And I don't know, for me it worked, so eventually it will work. But I think like when you get the no's, it should also be like knowing that they are not saying no. They're not saying no to you as a person. They most likely are not saying no to your skills, but they're usually what it means it's not right now. That's usually what they mean if it's a no.
This is your host, Dyutama, but you can call me DJ. And I love to inspire food photographers to dream. I spent 15 years as an architect studying buildings and constructing hospitals before taking the biggest leap of faith of my life, which was setting up a food styling and food photography business right from scratch. If you're a dreamer like me, wanting to start a new photography business or grow your existing food photography business, jump right into a world where I share practical, actionable strategies to improve your photography skills, to work with clients, make more money, all with a fearless mindset. This is the My Food Lens podcast, and we take you one step closer to your dreams. So let's go. Today, I have a very special guest, and she is Anja from Use Your Noodles. Now, why I say she's a very special guest? Because she and I were roommates at the food photography retreat in Florence this past summer. I'm sure you heard a lot about the retreat from me on my emails and also on my Instagram. So it was a wonderful retreat for food photographers. There were 10 of us, and Anja was one of them. And Anja and I had the opportunity to share a room. And that's how I got to know her a little bit more personally. But when I heard her story, I heard her version of the food photography world, how things are for her and her business side, I thought she just had to come on this podcast. I wanted to mix it up a little bit today. And that's why, even though Anja is going to be talking to us about food photography, she's not really going to talk about the art and the creativity or the technical side of food photography. I wanted to have Anja come in today to approach food photography from a whole different angle, the angle of business. She actually will come and talk to us about working with clients with confidence and making money doing what you love. So basically turning your passion into profession. And I really think Anja is such a great person to talk on this topic because she came from a different world. She started a food blogging and a food photography business from scratch. And she's built it from there. She's grown from there. She's scaled it from there. Today, she has diversified her avenues of income. And I think as someone who is technically so strong in photography, when they come and talk to us about the business side of things, it's something else. And that's why I think Anja is so perfect to talk to us all about working with clients with confidence. All right. So are you ready to welcome Anja with me? Here we go. Hi, Anja, and welcome to my Food Lens podcast. Such an honor, such a delight to have you here because I'm pretty sure that just like me, most of our listeners are completely in awe of your work. They love your work. So I'm sure they're as excited to have you as I am.
Thank you so much, Dyutama. So I'm really, really excited to be here. I'm excited that you asked me to be on your beautiful podcast. And I hope everyone will enjoy our conversation.
Oh, I'm pretty sure they will because, Anja, there's something so different about you. And I really have to mention it right now. And that is, we meet so many photographers and bloggers, on the Instagram platform. But there's something about you that really struck me. And I feel like you kind of speak my language. And there's, something that resonates with me. And that is that you are a brilliant photographer. I mean, you are creative. You love to talk about drinks photography. You love to talk about editing. You love to talk about the artistic side of it. But I feel like you have such a good balance because you love to bring out the business side, the real side, something that really makes food photography tangible, something that allows photographers to turn their passion into their profession. It's something that really resonates because this is the language I speak. This is what I truly, truly believe. And I live for this. And I felt that in your tone, like we've gotten to know each other a little bit over the past few weeks. And I really can feel that tone in everything you put forward. So I think that balance that you bring is so special. And that's why I'm truly excited for our conversation.
Oh, this means so much. Yeah, I'm really like eager to talk about anything related with food photography.
So we are going to talk
happy to
a
talk
lot
about
about money. We're going to talk a lot about money, right? And we're going to talk a lot about our clients and confidence, and it's going to get a bit serious. Why don't we start with something fun?
Okay.
I know. Yeah. So we want to know, Anya, just a little bit. Why don't you tell us something fun about you that we don't know yet?
Okay, so maybe someone has seen this in my stories. Maybe I don't often post about my private life, but I did start rock climbing just before COVID started. I wanted to start, but then like everything was closed. So after the COVID kind of went away.
Yeah.
So for 2 years now, I'm taking classes of rock climbing. And I've also started to go outdoors now. So it's really, really exciting. I'm like buying all the gear, trying not to buy too much because I try to live like more minimally. So just like the necessary stuff. But yeah, I do spend a lot of time on the wall.
Well, this clearly shows that you love a challenge and that you're ready to take life. You're ready to take life by the grip and really go for it. I love it. And I feel like, just engaging in something outdoorsy and doing something new, it really enriches our other creative side as well. I feel like it builds our business muscle, it builds our creative muscle, it gives us fresh perspectives. So I'm sure you've experienced that as well through your rock climbing, is it?
Oh, it absolutely does. It's really inspiring because also you get to go out and you get to see new places. You get to mostly relax your mind because climbing especially is such an activity where you basically can't think about anything else but that climbing problem, which is really great for anyone who runs their own business because probably that like running a business occupies your mind 24/7, even if you don't want to. It just like it is somewhere in the back. So that's like a really fun activity where I can have that few hours or maybe just an hour where I can't think about anything else, but just like being really present in that moment. So
in that moment.
I think that's important, like in business.
And I think it just nourishes you at so many levels. But tell us a little bit about your previous life. Tell us how you really got, because we know that you weren't born as a photographer. So tell us how you really got into the blogging and the photography world. Give us a snapshot.
So where do I start? So basically my education is in ecology, and I still kind of like to live by that, by taking care of the environment. I just really never found a place to work in that field, like professionally. So I just had like a meaningful job. It was really pain in the, you know what. So I was really lucky at that moment when I realized it was going nowhere, that I had my husband have a pretty successful job, pretty well paid. So I could say goodbye. And I just stayed at home trying to figure out what, where my next step would be, what I basically would want to do with my life. And I've always really enjoyed cooking. My mom is actually a cook, so I think I have that in my genes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like after a few months, after leaving my job, I started my blog just to share the recipes. Like it really wasn't anything serious. I didn't even use SEO or anything. Like it was just basically to share the recipes. But I think I kind of immediately saw that I want this to be more creative. Like if I check my first photos, or if you checked my first photos in my blog, you would see that I actually put thought in that. They're far from good, but I actually thought about, the props, the backdrops. So I think kind of in the back of my mind, I already had that creative side, and I knew that photography is really important. So I started to learn more about it. And then obviously I fell in love with it.
And you made us fall in love with it. Actually, that's what it is. You
I
made
hope
us
I
fall
did.
in. Yeah. I mean, your work speaks for itself. But tell me how. So, we kind of all have this trajectory where we explore photography and we fall in love with it. But at some point, it begins to take the shape of a business, of a profession, of a career, right? How did that happen for you? What was the trigger? And what led you into really exploring it as a full-time business?
I actually, fun story again. I actually wanted to be a portrait photographer or family photographer first. And that was after starting my blog. When I had my son, I shot 1,000 photos of him in a day, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed working with him. So I asked a few friends with families to take a few photos for them to kind of get my portfolio. And I did that. I built my portfolio for family business. And then after looking at it, like the photos were okay. They were like, nothing was wrong with the photos, but I just didn't feel that true passion as I did with food photography. And this is when I decided, no, I'm going to go back to food photography, and it all went from there.
Wow. So you tried another niche, and you knew that your heart was in food photography. And then you were like, okay, let's see how we can turn this into something really real and see how that goes. Was it really like
exactly,
I need to make this work? Or was it more like, let's see how this takes shape? What was the
It
tone?
was more like that. It was more like, let's just see how it happens. Because when I opened my business legally, I did not have any food photography client. And I don't even think I had any for a few months following that. I was working on other projects. So it was just basically, let's see where it takes me.
Yeah. And I think that's such a brilliant attitude. I feel like when we put that undue pressure on ourselves, that pressure of performance, it makes it so much tougher, because in the beginning, everything takes time and we begin to lose patience. And so we are putting that pressure, it just makes it that much harder. So I just want to ask you, Anja, there are so many of our listeners who really, really want to take up food photography full time. Many of them are doing this part time, or they have other full time corporate jobs, and they're literally taking out time on their weekends to pursue this passion. So many times they feel like they want to approach brands, but they're hesitant, and they stop themselves, and they're like, oh my God, how do I do this? So why do you think that happens usually when we are starting out? What is it that stops them or creates this hesitation in them to reach out to brands?
From what I see from the students I work with, I think the number one reason is probably that they're really not confident with their skills. That does not mean that their skills are not good enough to take on clients, but they just feel like it's really just the beginning, and that they need to build their skills, learn this, learn that, learn a million things before they can start working. And I think that's a problem in many businesses, not just food photography or photography in general. It's just not trusting that the level of the skills that you have is enough for a client. It's maybe not good enough for McDonald's. It's maybe not good enough, I don't know, for Mercedes or whatever, but it might be good enough for a local client. So just knowing and accepting that you're in the beginning stages of your process, I think really, really helps. I guess social media is also partly to blame why people would feel like that, because it does feel like photographers who are there just made it in 3 months and they got a 5-figure client or whatever, but that's definitely not the case. So I think just trusting the skills is usually an issue with start. I definitely was also guilty of that.
And I feel like something that you said earlier plays in so well into this. just having this, like, let's just try it. Let's see where this goes. Because no one is confident in the first go. I mean, look at rock climbing. When you did it the first time, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it was scary as hell and your
It's a
feet were
disaster.
like shaking, right? Isn't that true?
Yeah.
The first time you hold the guitar, the first time you play a chord on your piano, the first time you go dancing in public, you do whatever the first time, it's always shaky, but it only takes one time. Sometimes maybe two, to get that confidence, right?
Yeah, you're always starting stuff with thinking, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? But that's just like the first time you try, and then you see, oh, maybe it's not that bad. And I think it's just, yeah, like you said, you need to try it, and then you'll see that it's actually not that bad.
Yeah.
It's
And what's the
always worse
worst?
in our heads.
Yeah, what's the worst that can happen? Like, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think that's a good question to ask yourself. Yeah.
Anya, how would you say, like, what did you do? What worked for you? How did you build that confidence? Like the first time you reached out to a brand, did you feel like, oh my God, who am I? Did you have any imposter syndrome, the symptoms, that who am I? I'm just starting out. Will they ever want me? How did you deal with that?
I was like, the worst part for me was not reaching out, but it was what to say. So I really, really struggled to actually talk to any client, to actually reach out to any client whatsoever. I did that after I already felt confident that my skills were good, that my photos were good. So I didn't have the block of skills by the time that I start pitching out. The worst block for me was, what am I going to say? How am I going to communicate with them? How am I going to say what my rates are? What are even my rates? Or, well, maybe at that time I already had a little bit of an idea about rates, but it's like all that communication that was really the hardest part. And how I got through that was basically my husband. So I highly encourage anyone who struggles with anything to get someone they trust to support them. And I definitely would not be here if I didn't have my husband, who was always really supportive. And we talked about those issues that I had. He worked at a creative job, so he had kind of an insight of how things are going in the background. So he would give me some tips on how to proceed through discovery calls and how to proceed further on. So that was pretty helpful. So I think just getting insights from someone who knows, or just having someone support you, is just really, really important.
I love that. I love that. I love that you bring that. And, sometimes we have partners who can help us, but sometimes we have friends. And even if we don't have friends,
Exactly.
there are people in the industry who are more than willing to help. So just reaching out, just dropping that inhibition and asking the question, saying, can you please help me with this? It's such a deal breaker. My husband helped me as well. And for me, my hesitation was the legal part, the contracts, getting all of that. So I was like, oh my God, if this comes up, what am I going to do? And he is in the financial world. So he is a pro at that. And he helped me on all the financial, like even today, all my finances, he's the one who helps me out. So I feel like we all have our weaknesses or points that we don't feel 100% confident about. And we can find that one person who can, fill that gap for us. It's like a little jigsaw puzzle that fits perfectly. And then you just move on. I love your answer. I love that.
Yeah.
But that really brings me on to, a question which I think is a huge part of the process, but I'm going to ask you what you think about it. Like you talk about discovery call, and you talked about, the other aspects of having the process, really having a photography process, like what to say, how to conduct this whole thing, like just reaching out to client is not enough. So how much do you think having a process in place helps in building that confidence?
Oh, I think it does. It makes all the difference, because obviously when you don't know what the next step is, it's really hard to communicate that with the client. And if you don't know how to communicate that with the client, you're obviously going to be scared, because you have no idea what to say. You can just say hi, and then, oh, are we just going to sit here in silence? So you definitely need to know as much of your process as possible, but especially the first part from, reaching out to discovery calls and this everything that goes with that. Like when you go on a discovery call, just have a list of the questions with you. I always have a paper so I don't forget something. That's fine. They're not going to see it. And even if you're on Zoom talking to them, they don't care if you have that paper. I have the paper and I write the answers. That's fine. That way they will know you actually care about what they say and you take note of that. So I really highly encourage anyone listening to this episode to write down any process, any question that comes up during that client journey as much as you possibly can. And of course, in the beginning, you don't know what that is. So you'll definitely miss some parts. But then each time you have a client, you can add those in.
Yeah, you build your process as you go. No one expects you to know everything when you begin. But yeah, like you said, especially the beginning part, I feel is so important because let's say you did reach out to a client and they're like, oh yeah, this is interesting. Who's this person? We want to work with her or him. And then you're like, what next? And let's say you even get on the discovery call. Then they're like, okay, let's do this. Let's get this project going. And then you're like, what do I do next? So
how will we
really,
do?
Yeah. So I think you're right to say that the beginning part of how, having that clarity is so important. So Anja, can we together just build on this, that what are the different processes? Can we list that down that photographers should probably have in place before they pitch?
Before they pitch, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
Can you help us list that?
So you definitely, before you pitch, you need to know your process of how you're going to pitch, when you're going to pitch, when you're going to follow up, all of that. That's, before you do. And then when you pitch and you get an answer, you should definitely know what to answer, how to let them know what is the next step, what they need to do. Are they going to book a call? Are they going to go through an email? How are you going to communicate further? And then obviously it's a discovery call or a discovery email or something. You definitely need to know how that is going to go. And then when they hire you, you need to know the contract, the pricing, obviously how you're going to structure your pricing. You need to know all of that to let them know. And either the discovery call or after the discovery call, you usually send them an email. And then you also need to have the process of how, after you have that contract signed and everything is paid, how that's going to go. What are you going to do before the photo shoot? What are you going to do on the photo shoot? What are you going to do after the photo shoot? When everything is going to be delivered? How everything is going to be delivered? Basically, all of that, each step of that process needs to be kind of really clear. It also gives you confidence to know, like we mentioned, but it also gives the client confidence that they will get what they need from you. They will have a really great experience working with you. If you know all of that.
And they are in good hands. They are in the hands of a professional.
Yes, exactly.
True. I love that. I think it can be a bit overwhelming when we have never done a project before, right? If you have never done your first one, could be a bit tricky. But if you really map it out in your head, just take out a piece of paper and just start walking through a photo shoot in your head. What would you do? What would you need? And just have like a basic skeleton to begin with, that have it written down or documented in some way. I think all these steps that you just mentioned, just having that in front of you and then seeing if there are any gaps or just using that as a starting point. I think that itself is so good. But like you said, what you do before, what you do during, and what you do after a photo shoot, I think those are the processes that you really need to nail down. But more than that, I think, Anja, tell me if you agree with this. I feel like processes. Then go ahead. Yes.
I totally agree. I would just add that maybe on top of that, when you have that ready, it's also really nice to ask yourself, what does that client need at every step? Because it's a little bit trickier maybe to know that, and you need some experience because they will need different things. But it's also a nice thing to kind of remember that it's not just about you, and it's also about client and what do they need.
Absolutely. So Anja, do you think that of course, this is a very overwhelming part when you're beginning. You're like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. But also just backtracking a little bit, if we just go down to our skill set, like many times we feel like, you also mentioned this in the beginning. Many times we feel like, I need to know this. I need to learn how to do videos. I need to know how to do, levitation. I need to do cinematography. I don't know. Whatever it is, I need to know all of this. And only then I am ready to work with clients. The skills that we think we need to be able to get out in the professional world often holds us back. It stops us because we think we don't know everything, right? Do you agree?
Yeah, I definitely do. I would definitely say, since we are photographers, like our main thing is to study light. And I think like if you have that going for you, then you're basically ready. I mean, if you're not confident with composition, with styling, you can always hire a stylist, and then you're just there for the light. So just think of yourself as someone who basically catches light, and that's your priority anytime you take a photo. So just knowing how to work with light, and I see that in a lot of my students, is that they start with photography, but they kind of start with light, then move forward to maybe really elaborate stylings too quickly. So that at that point, they start to forget about the light. And then you get photos that are filled with beautiful props, with flowers, with everything, but the light is not there. So I just feel like in the beginning, it's just really important to focus on studying the light, taking your time on simple subjects and studying the light. Because if you know that basics of light, also the cinematography or any videography, anything will be so much easier when you know that. Because usually when people are studying different kinds of, I don't know, flying food, artificial light, yes, it's fun to learn that, but do you know how light operates? Do you know where the reflections go? How everything works? So I just really feel that this should be like the main focus in the beginning.
Yeah,
and when you know that, you're ready.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good way to begin. Like everything that you've said so far. This, to me, the biggest takeaway here is that pick the most important thing about photography, and that is light. And just work on that foundation. And even when you approach a client, just know that that's the only thing that you need to hit the nail on the head during the project.
Yeah.
The one thing that I would probably add here is that, like you said in the beginning, that, maybe we are not ready for McDonald's or Mercedes. It's also important for us to really do our homework. So we must go and look at what the client's brand is producing. What is the kind of imagery they need? And whether that falls within our style, our skill set or not. Absolutely. So if someone is doing cinematography and that's not what we are doing, that client is not for us at that time. So we are looking for a client who wants good lighting, who wants good, powerful photos, the basics and the foundation that we can offer at that time. So, right, to align our ambitions, I guess.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Right. And let's say that we've got the skill set, we are working on the foundation, and then we have mapped out our process. We muster the courage and we go ahead and we send out that pitch, and we are like sitting there crossing our fingers, and we're like, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, let them reply. And then we just get a no, or we don't hear for weeks. And it's just crushing. It's just so crushing. It's heartbreaking, right? Especially in the beginning when we are like pinning all our hopes on that one email that we send out. How do you think photographers can really deal with those rejections or no's or no replies with a positive mindset?
I would actually say like something similar as how I started my business, just not having expectations. I know this might not be like the positive thought, it might be more as a negative thought, but just not expecting the answer is what helped me is I just like when I sent a pitch email, I just send it as let's see if this works kind of mentality. And I don't know, for me it worked, so eventually it will work. But I think like when you get the no's, it should also be like knowing that they are not saying no. They're not saying no to you as a person. They most likely are not saying no to your skills, but they're usually what it means it's not right now. That's usually what they mean if it's a no, especially if you've done your homework of who you are pitching. Obviously, if you're just beginning and you're pitching McDonald's, they might be thinking, no, your skills are not there. But if you did your homework, then it's probably just not right now. So if you take it as a not right now, then okay, then I can follow up with an email and I don't know, a few weeks, a few months, and just ask them if they're ready to work at that time. So I think that also really helps.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, just keeping it light and easy and removing that pressure. I remember that I pitched for 4 months straight, at least 4 pitches a week before I really started, reaching a point where I didn't have to pitch as much. But it took 4 months of no replies, not yet, or we don't have the budget, we're not looking for a photographer, all of those things, but it clicks. And the thing is that you cannot give up, right? Because you cannot.
No, you cannot. You cannot.
You cannot.
I actually have a completely different story about my first pitching. I think I pitched like 4 or 5 brands, and I actually ended up working with 2. So that means that you might strike gold in the first time. Like you probably won't.
Yeah.
I think it was just luck, but you might. So don't also go into pitching thinking like I will not get a job. Like
so true.
You might certainly get a job. Yeah.
Absolutely so true. And I think the other thing that we could probably think about is that email pitching is one way of reaching out. But pinning all our hopes on the email pitches that we sent out is probably not enough, So like my first client came through word of mouth, and they were this huge, one of the biggest clients in Singapore. And it was through network, through word of mouth. So I feel like you need to start putting it out in the universe as well, I guess, that you're a food photographer, you're out for business, you're in the real world. And that also builds confidence because you're telling everybody, right?
Yeah, you need to be everywhere. You need to have a portfolio with possibly a good SEO. You need to be on social media. Like, even if you just post your photo and just say delicious burger, you don't need to have elaborate captions and I don't know, stories, inspirational stories. That's fine. Just be there present. And I also found this really helpful for when you do pitch clients. They will always go to Instagram. I don't know. They will. I could already see that when I pitched to one client, they didn't reply yet, but I already saw that they liked my posts immediately after I pitched the email. So they will go to Instagram, even if you have a portfolio. So it's really, really important to have some sort of online presence outside of your portfolio.
Yeah, and that's so true. I mean, you say it so well. Because I feel like as much as you have a website, many times clients do consider our Instagram as our portfolio.
They do.
So
they do. Yeah.
We are just living in such an era where we can't escape this as much as we want. Everybody is hanging out on social media and looking for food photographers on social media and looking for food stylists on social media. So that's so I love that. You can't really get away from it.
Most of the clients I got to work with, when they reached out to me, they found me on Instagram. They could find me through maybe Pinterest, but most of them if they found me online, they found me through Instagram. So I would say it's still really worth it.
And can I ask, Anja, are most of your clients local clients or are they global clients? How would you just generally, if we had to get an idea?
I have both. The majority of them are from Slovenia or from the neighboring countries, but I do have a few here and there that are outside as well. But yeah, mostly kind of sort of local.
But it also means that the reach is, when we are present on social media, it opens up avenues of us being able to even work with global clients. And,
Absolutely. Yeah.
on the digital world is just, as a food photographer, you can still be sitting in Europe and working with somebody in America, sitting in Singapore, working with somebody in Australia. So that's
also,
that.
if you're not working with them as a food photographer per se for a brand, they might still, if they see you have a running Instagram account, they might still have you on for a sponsored post or something if they're somewhere from afar. So, you shouldn't be scared of something like that as well, because it's a different stream of income, but it's also very powerful, and you can use that also to as extra income.
This is just so perfectly segued into our next question, because one thing I really love about the way you have built your blogging and photography business is the way you've diversified. You're working with clients, but at the same time, you have your blog, and at the same time, you're an educator. And, so you have all these different avenues. So can you share with our listeners just some ways that they can diversify or work with clients and they can actually make money being food bloggers or being food photographers?
Sure. Yeah. So absolutely, as a food photographer, you can work with brands like restaurants, cookbooks, magazines, and whatnot. So a bunch of options, but you also have the chance, for example, you already have a bunch of photos when you're practicing. You can sell them on stock photo sites. You could sell prints, for example. I haven't tried that yet, but I've gotten requests for them. So I think there is a market for that as well. You could also, if you feel confident enough, you can teach someone your skills, whatever your skills are. Is it blogging, the food photography, whatever it is? You could teach someone, you could sell some digital assets, as I also do. I think it's really, really important that also as a food photographer, you start to think about how to get maybe some money on the side, because we know COVID happened. And it was a bumpy ride. So, for example, if you only shot, I don't know, restaurants at that time, that would mean you basically had no work left. So it's really fun to either work as a food photographer in different ways, like not just the restaurants, but also maybe for brands, but also anything that's online, digital is also really helpful. So
brilliant.
I definitely think about that.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. You can never predict. So diversifying is so important, just so that you have money coming in at least from one avenue if the other one is temporarily affected.
Exactly.
I love that. So tell me one thing, Anja, how can photographers really start marketing themselves, or how can they really start putting the word out so that clients find them, or people really stumble on their Instagram account? I don't know. What would be some ways that they can start putting this out in the universe and getting people to approach them?
I would just, first of all, when I started my portfolio, I would just ask all my friends and all my family to just share things on Facebook, Instagram. Just use your community. It could be also your online friends, your mentors, to share the word for you. Because I'm a mentor and I always love to share my students, their success. And that's also how it's a one way of how they can get the word spread that they started their own business. Maybe it will help them get clients. So just to use your community to help you with that. You're not alone. Community is very, very important, especially in a job where you're most likely to be alone, or in some cases with a smaller group of people, but a lot of the time it will just be you. So it's really, really important to have that community and just, help each other. You'll also help someone else. And also recommendations. If you build your network of photographers, of creatives, of any people that's sort of in the industry, they will be really happy to spread the word and to recommend you to someone who might need a food photographer.
Yeah. I think that's so true. So leveraging your friends, your family, your community to really put the
Yes.
word out is such a great way. And I think that's actually one of the best ways, because I know that at least for me, it's true that some of my biggest clients have come through word of mouth. And it has only been through network. It has only been through people I've known. And they, like you said, they are more than happy to go and put in a word about you, even though you don't even ask them. But that's the
Yes,
power
yes,
of
exactly.
the community. I love that. So that's actually a very good starting point also, because we are comfortable. We are comfortable
Yeah,
asking people we know. We're comfortable
yes,
with our friends. And so we don't hesitate. We don't have, we're already dealing with so much hesitation and,
yeah.
anxiety, that this is one part that is like easy and comfortable for us. I love that. And obviously, also, that you already mentioned is that put your work out there on all online platforms where you want to be found.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
so don't spread everywhere because it's gonna be overwhelming. But as much
Mhm.
as you can handle and enjoy, it should also be enjoyable.
Right.
But yeah, spread your work all over the internet.
How do you, so for me, one of the things is that, anyone can get a client one time. So a client comes and works with you, and that's
Yeah.
great. But then, we have clients who become our cheerleaders. They become our patrons. They become people who are
Mhm.
like, I will only work with you. And that's the beginning of a long working relationship with them, right?
Yeah.
So can you share some tips where, let's say somebody does get a good client and they've had one project with them, then what are the things, like maybe one or two of your tips, what are the things that they can do to actually turn them into returning clients, to have more projects with them and continue the working relationship?
Yeah. So obviously you need to deliver for what they what they need. They need to be happy with what you did. So you need to put the work into really making sure that they get what they need, that it will help them. Just thinking about it as an how will I make their business better? And just going all in and make it better. So that should be your mission. And also, I think like even more important than the quality of your work is to make the client feel like you care about them. Ask them questions, listen to their concerns, listen to their questions and answer them. Try to calm them down if they feel worried about something. Try to explain when they don't understand something. Also, I've had different clients in my years of working as a food photographer. And the people who for their brand are there on a photo shoot or are taking care that the photos are looking good, um, they are usually not creatives, or they are creative directors, but they are not food photographers. So they are not like really niche, particularly knowing about that niche. So they might have some of their ideas, but all of those ideas are not perfect. Sometimes you just need to let them know that their idea is just not going to work. And I think that's really, really hard in the beginning, but it does pay off because when you tell them, what your idea, it's a great idea, but I think this and this would work better. And you have to say, why this is better. They will get to know you as a professional. They will really trust you as a professional. They will know that you know what you're doing. So it's not bad to say no to an idea of a client. And I've had that happen a lot of the times. I've also had clients who had an idea and just wouldn't stop with the idea, which, turned out not as perfect as it could be. Um, but as long as you try and be professional and try to let them know why, I think they will really, really trust you for that. And they will know that the next time an issue comes, you will be there to let them know what will be the better solution for them. So I think just really taking care of um, having that idea in your head that you are helping them and really taking care of that client. I think that's really, really important. And if this is what brings the client back to you. time and time again.
See, that's why I say that you and I speak the same language. Really,
Yeah.
I had a whole episode on exactly this, which is that, as photographers, we don't just have to press the shutter. We can really bring a lot of thought process into our client experience. So basically, just like you said, I had talked all about how, when the client presents ideas, we can always step in a nice way to have our creative take on it, to guide them, to tell them what might work. And many times they take the suggestion and many times they don't. It really depends on them.
Yeah.
But at least
But
they
you
know
were
that
there too. Yeah.
exactly, that you're an authority. And it just ties into everything that you said, which is that we have to deliver a good client experience. That is what it comes down to. They should know that you are rooting for them, you're in their team,
Yes,
you're
exactly.
only
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
about them and
And
whatever.
their success.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
it. So it's about them. It's never about you when you are delivering the project, and that's what
Yeah.
brings them back. I love it.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
so true, 100%. So let's talk a little bit about money, something that gets us nervous and anxious, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really, it's the most awkward part of everything. I mean,
Yeah.
do you think that money or rates or our fee plays a huge part in really feeling confident about turning photography into a business? Like how does money or our fee play a part in creating confidence within us? What would you say?
I think it's usually we're really focused on the numbers, but it's not always about the numbers because you will price differently for different types of jobs. I think it's just feeling confident that that price that you set, that you know why you set that price up. And I think that is what makes you confident. It also makes it easier for you to communicate the price with the client. It will make you sound more confident when you do. So I think just when you're working on the rate, knowing how and why you came to that rate, and I think that will be really, really helpful with knowing, oh yes, that's the rate. If they don't accept it, fine. I won't work for less. If they accept it, great. I'm happy. I know that's the correct rate.
So money does play a huge part in building that confidence, like the fee, knowing our rates before we reach out is very important for our confidence.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It is quite difficult though. I think this is probably the number one question that most photographers ask. Like, I don't know how to set my rates. I don't know how to price my work. Like that's so, and it's difficult because it's different in different parts of the world. So it's definitely not a cookie cutter approach for setting your rates. But Anya, are there some big pointers or tips that you can really share with our listeners, how they can set their rates or how they can feel confident about charging? Any tips that you have?
Yeah. So first of all, it's how I kind of started was to knowing what I want to earn. So I think that's the basis, because you don't want to work and then earn much less than you actually wanted to earn. So you need to know also your expenses, which goes kind of hand in hand.
I know I'm so sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I just really want to ask, like, how do you know how much you want to earn when you are beginning? Was there a benchmark or a ballpark figure that you had in mind, or you just set something for yourself? How did you come up with that?
I set something for myself. Okay. I track my expenses. So I know how much I spend in business, and I know how much I spend in my personal life, and also how much I want to save approximately per year to kind of buy stuff that is maybe more expensive, or to have savings. So that's basically the starting point, and then that's where you go from. I have an Excel sheet with all of my calculations, everything really structured. So this is how I started. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, continue, please.
Okay, yeah. So that's absolutely also about your skill level. Obviously, someone who's worked in the industry is gonna for years, it's going to charge much more than if you're just starting out. But how do you know when you're starting out how much you can earn or how much can you price? So there's like two things. It's the how are the prices on the market, and this is where your community comes in really, really handy. I found it very helpful when I worked with a photographer. I worked as a stylist and he worked as a photographer, and I knew what he was charging as well. So it kind of gave me the idea, okay, so he was better. I should not charge as much, but I'm also not really starting like on a starting point. So I kind of could figure out what my price should be and then test it out on the client. You know, there's there's no going around but just to test it out and see how the client perceives the value of your photos. And it will depend on the client as well. Also, like after some time you work with clients, you will try to start to recognize which clients are willing to pay more than others, and like what types of brands are more willing to invest in photography than others. It's not so easy in the start. So just, you know, you need to start, and there will be more rejection in the beginning just because you have no idea.
True. So I love it. So basically, you should know what you want to make. You know, I really love your approach because I feel like you didn't pick up a number from the market and say, oh, this photographer is charging so much, so maybe I should charge that much. Your beginning was based out of what you wanted and how much you wanted to make, and, you know, to turn this into a viable business for yourself. You started there and then you built on it by getting a little bit of a market rate. So I also love that tip that you can actually assist somebody, you can shadow somebody, or you can reach out to somebody who's in the market. And honestly, you just need that one figure. If somebody just gives you that, you know, if you know that it's a seasoned photographer and they can just give you a ballpark figure as well, that's it. That's all you need. You build it from there.
Exactly.
Oh, brilliant. And then as you go, you just continue to build on what you feel comfortable charging, whether what is the value of the work that you're bringing to your client, and, you know, other factors that come into pricing. But you layer your pricing as well. It's not like you will know everything in the beginning, you know, so start with whatever you feel comfortable and then build on it. Fantastic.
And never forget to raise your rates every now and then.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we invest in our gear, we invest in our skills, we invest our time, we grow as photographers. So why not? You know, our experience and what we bring to the table is definitely
if the market allows, then definitely. Yeah.
Perfect. So out of everything, Anja, that we've talked about today, like we've talked about so many things that contribute to the confidence, that contribute to people being able to think of food photography as a sustainable business. If I had to ask you, what is the number one factor, the top factor that contributes to building confidence to run a photography or a blogging business, what would be that number one factor for you?
I would definitely say it's the experience. Like nothing will make you more confident about yourself, but having a few clients work with you already, maybe having the pricing already a little bit established, but that all comes from experience. If you're just behind your computer writing down all these things, you might get an idea about everything, but it's not going to give you confidence. So it's all about going in and basically failing or succeeding, and then learning from both of those that will give you the experience and the confidence.
Yeah. And Anja, can I ask, I should have asked this in the beginning, but how long have you been into the food photography business world?
So I started my blog in 2015, and then I had kind of a short pause when I got my son, and I opened my business as a business in 2019, like in April 2019.
Oh, wow. So we are hitting 4 years. Fantastic. And look at the growth. Like that really shows what is possible in 4 years. Amazing. That's brilliant. I think you bring home such a great point, and that is the more you do something, the more confident you get, because Action creates clarity. If you take action, and the more action you take, the more confident you're going to get. So just go ahead, put your head in and do the work and get that experience. Absolutely love that. So, so many, since we are talking about experience and we are talking about not giving up, since we have had that tone since the beginning of this, can you give our photographers some inspiration, some advice, maybe your top tip, because it's so hard in the beginning and because we do have to deal with failures and rejections. But what would be your top tip to inspire or to tell food photographers to not give up in this journey?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's worth it. If what you do is what you enjoy doing, then all of those things that come aside that make you feel anxious will disappear as soon as you see that they're really not as important as you initially think. And I also really, really recommend you get yourself into a community. Like, I know we've talked about community so much, but it's really so important to have a few people. And when I talk community, it doesn't have to be like 100 people, 1,000 people. It's not necessarily all your Instagram followers, but just a few friends who you really trust, who will be your support for whenever the times are hard, for whenever you don't get clients, no one replies, maybe your project was a failure and you need to do it again. These are all very stressful situations and you should never face them alone. So you definitely need to find a few people. One is enough, who will lift you up when you're just not having those great days. Because we all know, in business, you have the days when you're just like dancing. Oh, I got this client. I got so much money. I got a good project, whatever. And then you have days when nothing is happening. It could be weeks when nothing is happening, not just days. So it's really, really important to have someone to basically lean on when you don't feel jumpy and dancing.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And I think a lot of us struggle with that as well, because we run our businesses by ourselves and we are sitting in one country and, not everybody around us, sometimes even our family members, don't really understand the business side. It depends on who your partner is and whether they come from that. Many times friends don't understand, They don't understand your big wins. They don't understand your losses because they don't come from the same world. So just having that community or one person, that's such a great tip, because that could be the one reason you never give up. I love it.
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. Anja, this has been so incredible. I mean, this is exactly how I had envisioned this conversation with you. You're like such a down to earth and such a honest and such a practical person. As much as you have your artistic side, I always feel like you have this very real and practical side to you as well. And I think we totally felt that, right?
Yeah. I'm very mathematical.
But you're also that artistic. I feel like you have that such a beautiful balance. And I think we really felt that in the conversation today. You've given us really good pointers, really good tips, lots of inspiration, lots of advice. And I hope that our listeners can, take the leap that they've probably been thinking about. So Anja, can you leave our listeners with where to find you? What's your awesome blog? You mentioned some of your courses or some of the other resources that you might have. Where would you like our listeners to come find you?
So you can definitely talk to me on Instagram. I love chatting on DMs. But otherwise, you can find my blog, useyournoodles.eu. And there is a bunch of articles on food photography, not as much on the business side, but more on the technical side currently on the blog. Also, you can find me on YouTube. Again, Use Your Noodles. I do have a course that's like full-on course from light composition and everything, but I do also run workshops from time to time. I already had one artificial light workshop online, and I'm now hosting a drink photography workshop in June. And I have a shop with some digital products as well as pitching guides. So if someone is interested in finding pitching email templates, that's also something I can help you with. But otherwise, I would just love to chat with whoever needs a chat.
And you're so sweet with that. I mean, really, even long before knowing you, just seeing your name on Instagram, and I think we probably exchanged a few messages, and you were so sweet. I still remember that. So you're definitely someone that people would love to chat. And like I said, you are the queen of diversification. I absolutely love everywhere that you've been able to, spread your business and spread your wings. Thank you, Anja, for being here today. I think you've really left us inspired and motivated to take the next step in our business. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
So that was Anja, and what a brilliant conversation this was. I feel like I wish I'd listened to this when I was starting out, It would have broken so many myths, it would have taken away so much inhibition, and it would have really helped me approach things in a very light and easy way. The biggest takeaway for me listening to Anja was that we really cannot operate from a place of pressure. When we set out in the market, when we set out in the real world, we definitely have to understand a few things. One of them is that it will take time. Secondly, there will be rejections and lots of no's along the way. The third thing is that we will have to do it our way. We will have to build our own processes. We will have to set out our own rates, and we will have to bring out our uniqueness in our business. There is really no right or wrong or industry standard when it comes to food photography businesses. Also, it varies where you are based in the world, which means that it's a great opportunity to do it our own way. And I feel like that's such a great way to start because it takes away the pressure of trying to fill in someone else's shoes or trying to be like some other photographer in the market or trying to do it someone else's way. You set your own path and you follow that. I feel like that's the best way to build confidence and to keep going. Do not give up. You saw Anja is in her 4th year of business and look at her growth, which only goes to show that as long as we keep doing the work, we build our muscle, we build our confidence, and we build our business. So I hope that this episode left you with a lot of takeaways, a lot of practical and actionable strategies, and a lot of here's what you need to do next. Here's what you need to do next. Here's what you need to know. I hope that it really set the tone for you to take the leap. But if you do have questions, if there is a doubt in your mind, you know where to find me. Email me at hello@myfoodlens.com or DM me on Instagram at Dyutama_myfoodlens. I would be more than happy to answer all your questions so you can take that leap that you've been waiting to take. All right. With that, I'll see you next week with another episode. Until then, bye-bye.